Welcome to the Yoga Nation, the Spirit of Gratitude podcast on the One Integration platform. Hello, friends. My name is Yogesh Patel, and this podcast focuses on bullying, self-awareness, and our inner spirit, inviting high-profile guests to share their experiences on these topics. And today, my next guest is Mr. Cliff Starks, a retired professional fighter in a career that spanned from 2009 to 2017, competing in the UFC, Bellator MMA, and the World Series of Fighting Leagues. And interestingly enough, he was selected as the Hall of Fame for the United States Mixed Martial Arts Organization. And I'm so pleased to have him here on the podcast here today. Welcome, with gratitude, welcome to the podcast, Cliff.
Hey, Yog, I appreciate you having me. Thank you very much.
And you called me Yog. That's all right. Awesome. Well, let's get started. Curious to find out, Cliff, what was the appeal about fighting that made you carve out a career?
Yeah, so I ended up sparring with a guy in boxing specifically. It wasn't even MMA, but I was so nervous and scared to get in there that I wanted more of it.
How old were you?
How old was I? 29 at the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was old. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, older, I'll say. But yeah, it just the adrenaline and the fear and the feeling of it, it excited me. So I wanted to see how far I could go in the game.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So this is something where you were a 12-year-old kid in a ring that.
So I did have a background as an athlete.
Okay.
So I did. I wrestled at Mountain Point. That was my freshman year.
And that's here in Phoenix?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my first time of actually doing something athletic. And the reason I got into that, I was actually an overweight kid. So I was an overweight kid before I even became a wrestler. And I focused on losing the weight. And
so were you bullied as an overweight kid?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got to hear put a bra on and fat kid and big black dog and just some not the nicest things.
Okay.
But I really focused on what I could control, and I would let go of everything else. Now you get better and better the more that you do it.
Come to learn that?
How did I come to learn that?
Because as a young kid, right? I mean, those epiphanies don't come to you.
So when I was 5, my grandfather passed away. And I remember seeing him at the funeral. Like I saw his body in the casket, lifeless individual, and it's like scared the crap out of me. I'm terrified. And in my head, I didn't know this was what I was doing, but I was literally coaching myself through the process. And I said to myself, that's going to happen to me one day. One day I'm going to be in a casket.
Yeah. And
I thought, if I'm going to die, well, I'm going to live as much life as I can. And so I focused on I'm going to live as much life as I can. And people are going to do what they do. That's what they do.
Right.
But you have a choice. Either you can have them put you in a box and say, you're going to live this life, or you can live the life that you want to live.
Right.
So that's what I focused on doing.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really powerful. And hopefully a person listening in the quiet corner of the room can reflect on what you just mentioned.
I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. And going now back to your career as a professional fighter, one of Mike Tyson's famous quotes, he says, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
In the octagon, how did you endure after your first punch?
Mine was everyone has a plan until they get kicked in the leg. I ended up going with a Muay Thai guy. It sucked. I took so many kicks. And me and Jameson, he was one of my coaches. After I took all of those kicks, I somehow came away with that fight. I won the fight. But in my head, I'm like, I never want to feel that experience again because I couldn't walk straight for 2 weeks. And it was me and my coach, and I'm like, I want to figure out how I never, ever feel what I felt that day. Now, what's interesting, there's a guy, his name's Myron Golden, and he says an amateur practices until they get it right, a professional practices until they can't get it wrong.
Right.
So I do my best to be a professional in everything that I can do, and that way I can take as little damage as possible.
But aren't you
getting
scared?
inside that cage?
Aren't you scared?
Scared. I feel the fear,
Okay.
and then I allow the fear to go into faith, because you're going to have either fear or faith in everything that you do, right? And I know this: if you act in fear, you're tight. If you act in faith, you're loose, you're relaxed. And you're literally teetering between those two, and you have to make a decision. So I do my best to make my decision towards faith. And if I'm not going towards faith, I ask myself, well, why am I not going towards faith, and what would support me in going towards faith?
Right. Which kind of, I guess, leads me to my next question, which you've somewhat answered. Mm-hmm. How do you maintain the balance between the aggressive nature of the sport and the inner calmness or peace required for personal growth?
Yeah, my mind, I actually did not know it's a little bit strange comparatively to most people, and I understood this by connecting with a psychologist on it. I can tie things together that seem seamlessly not tieable. And what I mean by that, aggression and growth actually go hand in hand. If you take a seed, aggression and growth go hand in hand. So if you take a seed and you plant it into the ground, that seed just doesn't sit there. It's literally breaking itself apart. So there is a form of aggression and growth happening at the same time in everything that we do.
You just turned my world upside down. Well, because I grew up in a nursery. So I was planting seeds all the time.
Yeah.
With my dad.
Yeah. Very cool. I love it. I love it. And I say life gives us all the lessons. We just have to be ready to accept them.
Yeah.
So I look at life. Life is my greatest coach.
Right. And I guess, well, in a more ordinary term, it's you have to, in order to, you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet.
Yep.
Yeah. Speaking of coaching, you teach a lot about stepping outside the comfort zone to your clients. Mm-hmm. What are some practical pieces of advice to help change their mindset on this?
So my biggest thing, every time I do something that's really, really challenging, I got to ask myself the question, why? Why am I doing this? Mm-hmm. Because when I can effectively answer that, I can continue to walk in my faith. Because that faith fear is, we're teetering on that all the time. We're teetering on that all the time. And sometimes more so than others. Like when I was that overweight kid and it wasn't happening fast enough, because nothing ever happens fast enough to the brain. Like the brain goes like, well, we need to get it today, because if we don't get it today, it doesn't work. And so my why was, I wanted something different. I wanted it to look different. I wanted to feel different. I wanted to see myself as a different person. So I'm always looking at, why am I doing this? Like, people don't just grow just to grow. They wouldn't do it. If I told them, hey, I want you to do some push-ups, some sit-ups, some squats, and you're going to look the same, you're going to feel the same, and nothing's going to change in your life. Like, they're like, well, sign me up for something else.
Yeah. But what is it, though?
Yeah. So
stepping out of the comfort zone.
Well, to step out of your comfort zone is to step out of something that you're used to doing one thing, and then it's really just getting used to doing something else. Like, that's ultimately all it is. I had one guy, his name's Michael Burnoff, absolute genius of a man, and he says, it's harder than we would like it to be. That's all it is. It's just harder than we would like it to be. But it's not hard. It's just in our head, it feels hard. So since it feels hard, people make all these big dragons in their head. And it's like, oh, it's going to be the end of the world, and this is going to change everything, and I can't do this. Like, and then you do it and you're like, oh, wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Huh. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
Does that same logic apply to kids?
Yeah, it does. It's really, really cool. It applies to kids and adults having kids.
Okay.
Because there's a saying, don't cry over spilled milk. No one told me how much spilled milk it was going to be, though. Like, they spill a lot of milk randomly all over the place. And they teach me to be a better leader. And in me being a good leader, they become better leaders for it. So it's really kind of cool.
Yeah.
Because we can feed off of each other. And like one of my kids, I tell him, hey, dad's going to be the best dad he can be. And you be the best son that you can be. And that's just what we're going to do. He goes, all right, Dad, let's do it. And that's what we do. We just focus on being our best.
What have you seen as the progression when people step out of their comfort zone into that new normal?
It's a beautiful thing because not only do they see that they can do it, they can also support others in doing it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they, in some respect, they become a mentor to someone else.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I look at, I know you interviewed Tyler for Bully This. My biggest challenge for me was loving the bully. I became so strong, the bully couldn't bully me anymore. But I have to have compassion for the bully. Because eventually, if I don't, well, now I become the bully.
Right.
And so we're all learning lessons somewhere.
Reminds me of the phrase, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
So you love the bully.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say love, but you try to understand them more.
Love the bully.
Really?
Love the bully, yeah. Because I think I'm a big believer in love's the answer. And I don't think anyone just becomes the way that they become.
Sure.
You know, I don't think there was a conditioning somewhere. There was something. And how can you possibly see that? I mean, the understanding, I think if you truly understand something, you're actually loving it. When you take the time to understand it, you are loving it. You're loving that process of understanding.
Yes, agreed. Do you define that as one of the anchors in life that can apply to kids and young adults?
Yeah, it's been huge for me as I go through my journey. Like, one thing I wanted to fix everybody. I did at one time. And then I realized it's too much for one individual to do. And then I actually learned, I can teach people how to think or how to use the perspective that I use. Because my perspective, bullies can't bully me because it's all in my head anyway. It's the meaning that I prescribe to it.
Sure. That's pretty deep.
Yeah. I've been known to go deep, yeah.
Well, let me ask you a fun question.
Yeah.
In your career as a UFC fighter, I believe you got to number 5 in the world?
No, but that would be cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I was working towards it, but thank you.
Well, you mentioned, I guess a fun fact about you is that you trained one of the top fighters in the world?
Yes.
Who was that?
So I've worked with Matt Franco. I worked with Trevor Smith. I never worked with Anderson Silva and them. That would be cool, though. I always imagined it. But, yeah, I've got to train with some of the best in the world, which was an absolute amazing experience to be a part of. And I also, there's a guy, oh, my goodness, he's going to get so mad because I can't. Terrell, who he actually was getting ready to fight for Bellator championship. He was a fight away from it. Terrell Fortune.
What do you learn from these individuals? I mean, they want to take your head off, right? That's the name of the game.
So with Tyrell would actually go with smaller guys. And he was one of the most agile heavyweights I'd ever seen. And so I learned from him, sometimes the best training partners are exactly opposite of what you are. They're going to teach you some amazing things. And that goes on perspectives too. Sometimes someone who has a completely opposing perspective to you can see things that you never saw and have you show up in a different way. Trevor, that guy was a beast. I mean, he wrestled with Kel Sanderson. Kel Sanderson was his coach. And this guy's 159-0 as a collegiate wrestler. Yeah, the guy was a beast. And when I would go with Trevor, wow, I'd never felt strength like that. never felt strength like that. He had a grind and an ability to him and a work ethic that was out of this world. And he was a loving father. You know, he always had a smile on his face, and he'd do his thing. But he was a grizzly bear. He was like, be careful. Grizzlies, watch out. But me and him, iron sharpens iron. He made me stronger, and I would like to believe that I made him stronger too as we went through the process. And he put me in compromising positions I wasn't used to being put into. And it was good for me because it allowed me to angle and do different things. And when I would get into fights, dealing with something like when you go with a grizzly bear, then normal humans isn't so bad. Like, oh, this is pretty nice.
So are you slowing the fight down to know where you should be from a geometry standpoint, knowing that a certain kick or punch is coming to you, and, you know, that slight shift of weight or center of gravity that can
that's a good question. It's like it goes back to the amateur professional thing again. The more you do it, the slower it becomes because you're practicing it.
Right.
And you're practicing it with intentionality, getting better and better. I love the chess game of the fight. And some people couldn't see that it was a chess game because they never fought. So they thought they knew about something that they didn't know about. And they go, oh, it's just this, until you get into it. And I say the more I live, the humbler I get. Because every time I get into something, it's harder than I thought it was going to be. Like every time I get into something new, it's harder than I thought it was going to be. But I also start adjusting and learning and figuring it out. And things start slowing down. So the mind's our best friend, and it's also our worst enemy.
Yep.
It's literally trying to keep us to survive. Like, it's like, all right, don't do anything. We know this spot, so let's just stay in this really small area. We're like, I want to expand. Crap. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm learning it. Okay, we got enough. We got enough information. Let's stay small. And it's figuring out how to work with your mind and your heart, putting the two together so that you can become powerful and expand and be the leader that you were meant to be.
Interesting. Wow. Profound and simple.
Yeah.
Last question. Fun question. What 3 things were you grateful for this past weekend? On the spirit of gratitude.
Gratitude, my kids' health. And
well, no, specifically, what 3 things were you grateful for this weekend?
This weekend. I like that. Okay. Me and my kids went to the Playland, which was really nice, and my wife, and got to hang out with each other, connect with one another. I got to watch my kids act like goofballs as they do when they go to the Playland. Grateful that I am improving my communication with my wife on a regular basis. Yeah, we're constantly improving our communication with each other and figuring out, like, I might get in trouble for this, but I'm okay with that. If you're arguing logic when someone's being illogical, you are being illogical by default.
One more time.
If you're having a logical argument with someone who's being illogical, you are illogical by default.
How?
Because if you're arguing logic and someone is arguing illogically, like it's like if I said the sky is blue and they go, no, it's magenta. And they're like, and you can give every evidence and information about why the sky is blue, and they see it as magenta, and they're not going to change like it's magenta and I don't care what you say.
Okay.
You constantly going at it, you are wasting your energy and their energy.
True. Yes.
So you are becoming illogical by trying to be logical with someone who's being illogical.
Gotcha. Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I'm grateful to know that. It's freeing, actually, to be like, wait, I can just walk away from a person. I literally don't have to have this discussion with this person. We're good. So there's that piece. And then
I'll try and use it on my wife this weekend.
and then the other thing I'm super, super grateful for is let's see. We actually had an amazing, amazing dinner. I love to eat. Yes, I love to eat. So we went to a steakhouse, which I love steakhouses. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You're talking a fillet or a porter?
Yeah, so ribeye.
Ribeye, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And this was at Longhorn, it's called. Longhorn. Really good stuff.
Cliff, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
appreciate you having me.
I appreciate you having me on.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And
right.
I appreciate the questions.
Oh, it's, again, not knowing you, right?
Yeah.
Looking at your interviews and, past YouTube videos, it's like, what could I do to ask intelligent questions with a particular perspective I wanted to have?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm absolutely. 100% loved it. And audience love you. Let's keep having fun on the journey.
Absolutely.